Hi, my name's Rayo Khalifa, and for my persuasive, I'm going to do why people need to stop dumping garbage into the ocean. Have you ever wondered why people dump garbage into the ocean and how they are legally able to do that? I don't have a background on this topic, but I do think it's something that needs to be talked about. What people need to know about this is because they need to hear and understand how wrong it is to be doing. What exactly is being dumped into the oceans, and what have people been throwing into them? There are many animals suffering because of garbage being dumped into the oceans, and what can we do to stop this? People can get fined up to $500, or if they're repeated offenders, they can be charged as much as $2,000 for throwing garbage out of their windows. However, there is really no fine to be throwing garbage into the oceans. So, with that being said, there are not a whole lot of rules as to what people cannot throw into the oceans. Before 1972, communities around the world used the ocean for waste disposal, including the disposal of chemical and industrial waste, radioactive waste, trash, mutations, sewage sludge, and contaminated dredge materials. I got that source from EPA.gov in paragraph 1. Before 1972, wastes were often being dumped into the ocean because people thought the waters had an unlimited capacity to mix and disperse wastes. Here are a few things the National Academy of Science estimated in 1968 as well as throwing into the oceans. 100 million tons of petroleum products, 2 to 4 million tons of acid chemical waste, more than 1 million tons of heavy metals, industrial waste, and more than 100,000 tons of organic chemical waste. The EPA records indicate that more than 55,000 containers of radioactive waste were dumped spanning from 1946 to 1970, but 34,000 of that were dumped between 1951 and 1962, so that's a good majority of that being dumped within that 11-year span. As someone can see, the oceans have had a lot of harmful waste thrown into them. The EPA for the last 45 years has tried to cut down the amount of trash being thrown out into the oceans. However, there is still sewage being dumped in the oceans along with trash like paper, rags, glass, metal, bottles, glass bottles. All of that waste can last from 2 years to a million years. Yes, a million years. That's how long a glass bottle can last floating into the ocean. A tin can last 50 years. That's a long time and can hurt a lot of the wildlife living in our oceans. The only thing it looks like it has been done is people are no longer able to dump chemicals into the water due to the 1972 Act. And someone cannot dump their waste within 12 miles of the coastline because they don't want the waste washing up onto the coast. However, with the damage that is already done, all we can do is try and stop the harmful dumping and help the animals that are suffering. The biggest causes of pollution that are affecting marine life are microplastics, abandoned fishing gear, and other plastic pollutions. Over the last decade, we have produced more plastic than we have in the last 100 years. With that being said, that also increases the amount of waste entering our oceans. The littering of the ocean is threatening and taking the lives of millions of marine animals such as seals, whales, dolphins, seabirds, fish, and crabs. There are an estimated 4 to 12 million tons of plastic entering the ocean each year. That's enough to cover every foot of the coastline on our planet. There is a report that more than half the world's sea turtles and nearly every seabird on Earth has eaten plastic. Microplastics are often eaten by sea animals because they're so small. But the problem with that is the plastics contain toxic chemicals. The animals don't die right away. It takes months to years to affect them, so it's a long and painful process for them. In 2014, an estimated 15 to 51 trillion microplastic particles were floating in the ocean, weighing between 93,000 tons and 236,000 tons. That's a lot of microplastics floating in our oceans. Abandoned fishing nets are entangling and killing whales, dolphins, turtles, seals, and other sea animals. Cruise ships dump more than 250,000 gallons of wastewater and sewage every day. The waste contains bacteria, pathogens, medical waste, oils, detergents, heavy metals, and other harmful substances, all of which are putting aquatic life at risk. and I got that from www.care2.com. There are many things as humans we need to do to help fix this problem and make sure it doesn't continue. Here's what we can do to help reduce the amount of garbage thrown into the oceans. Reduce the use of single-use plastics. So don't use a plastic once and throw it away, even though that it's a lot easier to do that than continue to reuse it. Some examples of single-use plastics would be like plastic bags, water bottles, straws, cups, utensils, dry cleaning bags, and takeout containers. Increase waste management where the problem is the greatest, which would be in rapid growing countries because the consumption of plastic is much faster than what a country can handle. Examples of these countries would be like Indonesia and China. Another thing that can be done is to recycle. That is easier said than done for some people because recycling can be a pain, and there might not be a recycling place close by, or there might not even be a recycling place anywhere in the state. The stats show that only 9% of plastic gets recycled, so that means 91% of the plastics do not get recycled. That is a lot of waste going back into the ocean. Avoid the use of microbeads. They can be seen in some face scrubs, toothpaste, and body washes. Ultimately, there just needs to be better knowledge and education on this topic. People do not understand how severe this waste and pollution is to all marine life. In conclusion, living consciously and watching what a person does with their waste is an important first step. Looking for resources such as recycling centers in a community is a good step in garbage and waste not being thrown into the waters. We as people should come together and be part of a cleanup group. Whether or not someone lives by an ocean, they should try and watch how much they are throwing away and help do their part in that way, because some people might not be able to be part of a cleanup group. So the way that they can help is just by watching what you're using and watching what you're throwing away. In conclusion, it is never too late to reverse the pollution in our ocean.
Good job.